There's a kind of pain that doesn't bleed, but it never really stops. The kind you carry quietly while smiling at strangers, answering emails, and folding laundry. It's the ache of a tired soul, the sting of silent suffering. And if you've ever laid in bed at night asking, "God, why does it still hurt so much?" then this video was made for you. You're not here by accident. You're here because heaven heard what you haven't said out loud. Most people will never know how much you've survived, how many times you had to be strong for everyone else while your own heart was falling apart. This isn't just a prayer. It's a sacred pause, a moment to breathe again, to stop pretending you're okay and finally let God into the places you've hidden, even from yourself. Because the truth is, He sees it, the emotional pain, the regret, the loneliness. And more than that, He knows exactly how to comfort it. So don't click away. Don't silence what God is trying to heal. There's something in this video that your soul needs, and it's not hype, it's holy help. Stay with me until the end, because in a few minutes we'll pray together, and when we do, you might finally feel what your heart has been longing for, peace that reaches where words can't. We come to you not with polished hearts, but with broken pieces. Sometimes healing begins not with strength, but with surrender. When the soul is tired and the silence grows heavy, there comes a moment when we don't show up perfect. We show up real. God is near, even when all we have are trembling hands and eyes that won't stop crying. He's not waiting for you to compose yourself. He's waiting for you to come undone. Because there's something sacred about the rawness of pain. It's the language of the brokenhearted, and heaven understands it. You are not weak for needing healing. You are brave for seeking it. And maybe tonight that bravery looks like whispering, "God, I don't even know what to say." That's enough. That's holy. When you lay your emotional pain at His feet, not dressed up, not justified, just honest, it becomes an invitation for divine comfort to enter the room like a warm light in a cold space. Psalm 34:18 says, "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." That closeness, it's not symbolic, it's personal. So take a deep breath. Let your tears fall if they need to. Let your heart say what your lips cannot. You don't have to figure it all out before you come to Him. You just have to come. Bring the regret, the disappointment, the quiet suffering. Bring the tired soul that's been pretending to be fine. Because the next step is to name what's really hurting. And sometimes, that's the most courageous thing we'll ever do. Sometimes it's the absence of something we needed and never received. Not every wound comes from what happened. Some wounds come from what didn't. The hug that never came, the words you longed to hear, the affection that was withheld. And slowly, silently, those absences become heavy. Emotional pain can be so subtle that you don't even notice it's shaping your life until you find yourself avoiding love, distrusting kindness, or feeling numb when you should feel joy. Naming these wounds doesn't make you weak. It makes you honest. Let's call them what they are: rejection, abandonment, betrayal. That silent pain that you've carried for years, it has a name, and once you name it, healing has a place to begin. Maybe it was a parent who never saw you, a friend who disappeared when you needed them most, or maybe it was you, believing that you had to be strong all the time just to be worthy of love. If this is resonating with you, it's not by accident. Go ahead and like this video right now, not for the algorithm, but as a personal declaration. Yes, this is where I begin to heal. Sometimes we try to pray away what God is gently asking us to face. He's not rushing you. He's guiding you. Think of him not as a distant judge, but as a quiet counselor, sitting beside you saying, "Tell me where it hurts." That's where transformation begins, not in pretending, but in permission. Permission to feel, permission to speak the unspeakable. And once we've said it out loud, we're no longer carrying it alone. But what happens next is even more freeing. We release it into your hands, not because it didn't matter, but because holding it is hurting us more. There's a sacred moment in every healing journey when the soul whispers, "I can't carry this anymore." Not because the pain has vanished, but because clinging to it is slowly breaking you from the inside out. We often think releasing the weight means minimizing what happened, but it doesn't. Forgiveness isn't pretending it didn't hurt. Letting go isn't saying it didn't matter. It mattered deeply, and that's why it must be surrendered to God. Picture your heart as a room filled with heavy boxes, each labeled with old regret, unresolved betrayal, unspoken disappointment. You've been trying to function around them, pushing them aside, stepping over them, rearranging them so others won't notice. But today is different. Today you're not managing the pain. You're placing it in God's hands. You're saying, "This is too much for me, but not too much for you." And that, dear one, is what emotional healing looks like in real time. As you breathe out the burden, feel the tension leaving your shoulders. This is more than just a prayer. It's a transfer, a spiritual transaction. You're not abandoning your story. You're letting God hold the parts that are too heavy to carry alone. And you know what's beautiful? Every time you do this, you create more room inside for peace, for clarity, for the next chapter. Because once the weight is out of your hands, His comfort has space to come in. 2 Corinthians 1, verses 3 through 4. The God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles. There is a kind of comfort that doesn't just soothe, it restores. It doesn't talk over your pain or rush your process. It sits with you in the dark, gently breathing peace into the places that forgot what peace feels like. That's the kind of comfort God offers. Not a quick fix, not a shallow pat on the back, but a steady presence. Like a weighted blanket on an anxious chest, His presence makes it easier to breathe. So if your soul is tired, if your mind is spinning, if your heart feels like it's been screaming in silence, this is where the shift begins. Don't look for fireworks. Look for nearness. Sometimes the greatest miracle is not the storm stopping, but knowing you're not alone in the boat. His comfort is not loud, but it is deep. It meets you where no one else can. And once you feel it, you begin to recognize how many of your patterns were just survival, and how God is inviting you into something better.
We don't want to live in survival mode. Pain has a way of building systems inside us, unseen, automatic, and exhausting. We start bracing ourselves for abandonment, even when no one's walking away. We isolate before anyone can reject us. We overwork, overgive, or emotionally shut down, not because we're cold, but because we're scared. These aren't flaws. They're strategies, defense mechanisms built in the middle of emotional storms. But eventually, what once protected us begins to imprison us. Living in survival mode feels like being stuck in a loop. You wake up already tired. You smile, but it's hollow. Your relationships stay shallow, not because you don't want connection, but because you're terrified of being hurt again. And the worst part? Sometimes even joy feels dangerous, like you'll jinx it by letting your guard down. But Psalm 147:3 says, He heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. And healing starts when you realize you were never meant to live constantly bracing for impact. So today, we break that cycle, not by willpower alone, but by prayer. A restoration prayer that asks God to dismantle the emotional autopilot. A prayer for the broken parts that keep repeating stories of shame, betrayal, and abandonment. And as we release these spiritual reflexes, space is made for something new, for peace that doesn't feel like a trick, for trust that doesn't feel dangerous, for a life that feels lived, not just endured. But what about the wounds others caused, the ones still bleeding? What do we do with that? We may not feel it fully yet, but we begin the process. She held on to that text message for 3 years, never deleted it, never responded. It was the last thing he said before walking away. No apology, no explanation, just silence. And every time she saw it, the shame and betrayal came rushing back. That message became a monument to the pain. But one night, in the stillness of her room, something shifted. She whispered, "I don't want to carry this anymore." That was the beginning, not of forgetting, but of forgiving. Forgiveness is not approval. It's not excusing what was done or denying how deeply it broke you. It's saying, "This no longer has power over me." And sometimes we forgive slowly, in layers, with tears. It's a spiritual decision we revisit over and over, like tending to a wound that needs daily cleaning. And just like that woman holding a message that once pierced her soul, there comes a time when you realize you've already suffered enough. Now it's time to let healing do its work. Ephesians 4:31-32 says, "Let all bitterness be put away from you, forgiving one another as God in Christ forgave you." Not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. That's what this healing prayer is for. It's a release, a sacred turning point where your pain doesn't get the final word. You may not feel ready. That's okay. Forgiveness is not about how you feel. It's about what you choose. And when you choose to forgive, your hands are finally free to hold joy again. We may not feel it fully yet, but we begin the process. I want you to imagine someone. Her name is Rachel. She's in her late 30s, soft-spoken, and carries a sadness in her eyes that doesn't always match her smile. 3 years ago, someone she trusted deeply walked out without warning, left only a short text message behind. No closure, no explanation, just silence. And every time she saw it, the shame and betrayal came rushing back. That message became a monument to the pain. But one night, in the stillness of her room, something shifted. She whispered, "I don't want to carry this anymore." That moment didn't erase the pain, but it started the shift. Forgiveness doesn't mean what happened was okay. It means you're choosing not to relive it every day. Rachel didn't suddenly forget the betrayal, but she realized that her bitterness was costing her peace. And peace, beloved, is too expensive to trade for pain. That's why we forgive, not because they earned it, but because holding on is slowly tearing us apart. Forgiveness is like cleaning a deep wound. It stings at first, but left untreated, it festers. And Rachel? She chose healing. She chose freedom. Ephesians 4:31-32 reminds us to get rid of all bitterness, be kind and compassionate, forgiving one another, just as Christ forgave you. Not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. That's what this restoration prayer is for. It's a release, a sacred turning point where your pain doesn't get the final word. You may not feel ready. That's okay. Forgiveness is not about how you feel. It's about what you choose. And when you choose to forgive, your hands are finally free to hold joy again. Help us feel again, not just pain, but also hope. Somewhere along the way, we stopped laughing from the gut. We stopped dancing in the kitchen. We stopped expecting good things. Pain didn't just break the heart, it dulled the colors of life. But God never designed joy to be a distant memory. Nehemiah 8:10 says, "The joy of the Lord is your strength." And that joy isn't a denial of your suffering, it's a declaration that pain won't have the final say. It's your inheritance, and it's coming back. Joy doesn't always arrive with a trumpet. Sometimes it sneaks in through the sound of your child's laughter, or the way sunlight warms your face on a cold morning. It's subtle, it's sacred, and it's powerful. Because when God restores joy, He also restores your desire to live again, to hope again. That numb place in your soul, He's breathing life into it now. Not fake happiness, but real, holy joy. The kind that doesn't depend on circumstances, but flows from His presence. And friend, if this moment is speaking to something inside of you, don't keep walking this journey alone. Go ahead and click that subscribe button right now. Not because I asked, but because you need a space that reminds you week after week, you are not alone, you are not forgotten, and you are still healing. This isn't just a video, it's a place of restoration. And subscribing is your way of saying, yes, I'm making room for joy again. And the next step in that healing? It's rebuilding trust.
Help us trust that you are not like people. Trust breaks quietly. Sometimes it shatters in one big moment, but most times it leaks out slowly through broken promises, unanswered calls, words that wounded when we needed warmth. So when someone says, trust God, it sounds simple, but it's layered with silent fear. What if He leaves too? What if I open up and it happens all over again? That's why rebuilding trust isn't just a mental choice, it's a heart journey. A slow return to the truth. God is not like people. Psalm 118:8 reminds us, "It is better to take refuge in the Lord than to trust in man." And while that's easy to quote, it's harder to live, especially when the wounds came from people who were supposed to protect us. But here's the gentle truth. God doesn't manipulate, ghost, shame, or betray. He restores. He patiently rebuilds, and He'll never demand a trust you're not ready to offer. Instead, He walks with you, step by shaky step, teaching you how to open your heart again without losing yourself in the process. And here's the beauty of spiritual healing. When God rebuilds your trust in Him, He also starts to heal how you trust others. Not everyone will deserve access to your heart, but some will. Healthy, kind, consistent people sent in the right season. Emotional pain may have taught you to keep the door locked, but healing teaches you which doors to reopen and which ones to keep closed. And as you learn to trust again, you'll begin to see something deeper. That this process isn't just about comfort, it's about growth. Healing is not just about comfort, it's about growing stronger, wiser. Emotional healing isn't a soft landing, it's sacred rebuilding, and sometimes we mistake comfort for healing. But true healing goes deeper than a moment of relief. It asks questions, it invites reflection, it pulls you toward growth. Proverbs 4:7 says, "Wisdom is the principal thing, therefore get wisdom." Because it's not just about feeling better, it's about becoming someone who no longer lives from the same place of wounding. Wisdom gives language to your pain and purpose to your process. Sometimes that wisdom comes through prayer. Other times it comes through a good counselor, a mentor, a book that speaks right into your soul. It could even be a video like this one. Healing doesn't mean doing it alone. It means learning to listen to what your inner wounds are trying to say and inviting God to respond with both truth and tenderness.
You begin to see your triggers, your patterns, your emotional exhaustion, and instead of hiding from them, you gently ask, Lord, what are you trying to teach me here? This is where spiritual healing becomes transformation. You're no longer just reacting, you're discerning. You begin to say yes with clarity and no with peace. You recognize what drains your soul and what restores it. That's not selfish, it's sacred stewardship. And the more wisdom you gain in this process, the less space there is for shame. Which is why in the next step of our journey, we're not just asking God for comfort, we're asking Him to rewrite the story of who we think we are. Replace our shame with dignity. Shame is a silent thief. It doesn't shout, it whispers. You're not enough. You should be over this by now. If they knew the real you, they'd leave too. But those are not God's words. Those are lies shaped in the shadows of past pain. And today, in this space of healing, we expose them to light. Because shame doesn't just hide you from others, it hides you from yourself. It builds walls where God wants windows. And healing begins when you stop agreeing with the voice that shames you. Psalm 139:14 says, I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. That's not a poetic exaggeration. It's your identity. You are not too broken. You are not too late. You are not too much. The enemy wants you to wear shame like skin. But Jesus came to clothe you in righteousness, not regret. He calls you beloved. Not just tolerated, not just forgiven, beloved. And every time you speak that truth, you dismantle a lie that's lived in your soul for too long. So today we ask, Lord, remove what shame tried to build. Restore our dignity. Rewrite the story in our minds that told us we were unworthy. This isn't about self-help, it's about spiritual rebirth. You were never meant to carry the weight of past failures like a chain around your heart. God's comfort brings restoration, but His truth brings freedom. And when that freedom enters, something extraordinary happens. You finally begin to rest, not just physically, but in your soul. Matthew 11:28. Come to me all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. There's a kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. It's not in the body, it's in the soul. That emotional exhaustion from carrying what you never told anyone, smiling when you're breaking inside, surviving when you long to simply live. Jesus didn't say, come to me when you have it together. He said, come to me when you're weary. And if that's you today, then this is your invitation, not to perform, but to collapse safely into His presence. Imagine spiritual rest as a deep exhale after holding your breath for years. That's what Jesus offers. Not just relief, but rest that reaches your spirit. The kind that silences shame, quiets the mind, and wraps you in a peace that doesn't make sense to the world, but fits perfectly on your tired soul. Emotional pain weighs more when we try to carry it alone, but there is rest in surrender. Rest in letting Him carry what you can't. So if you're weary, if you've been pushing through while silently suffering, you don't have to anymore. Lay it down, even just for today. Rest isn't laziness, it's trust. And as you begin to rest in His care, you'll sense something rising again. Hope. And with that hope comes vision. Because once you're rested, you're ready to see the future not through the lens of pain, but through the promise of restoration.
You redeem years. You rebuild ruins. When your soul has been in survival mode for too long, it becomes hard to imagine a future that looks any different from the past. But God doesn't just patch up wounds. He writes new stories. Isaiah 61:4 says, they will rebuild the ancient ruins and restore the places long devastated. He is the God who restores what seemed beyond repair. The years you thought were wasted, the parts of your life that felt too broken to dream again, He knows how to redeem all of it. And restoration isn't just about regaining what was lost, it's about receiving what you never thought possible. Joy where there was sadness, peace where there was chaos, trust where there was trauma. God's comfort doesn't stop at healing, it moves you toward purpose. He takes what the enemy meant for harm and transforms it into testimony. You begin to see not just what happened, but what can still happen. And that shift, that's the beginning of vision. So now I want to hear from you. What are you asking God to restore in your life? What vision is beginning to stir again in your spirit? Share it in the comments. Your words might speak life to someone else walking the same path. This is more than a video. It's a space for healing, a space to hope again, together. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to the channel and join this growing community of healing hearts. We walk this journey daily, and tomorrow, there's more waiting for you. Before we close, take a moment to slow down. Breathe. Let this prayer be more than words. Let it be an encounter. If your heart is tender, if your soul is weary, pray with me now. Jesus is near. Jesus, we come to you with our broken hearts and silent pain. You see what no one else does, the emotional scars, the regrets, the exhaustion buried beneath our smiles. We're tired of surviving. We need you to hold the weight we no longer can. We surrender the wounds we've named, the betrayal, the loneliness, the unspoken disappointments. We ask for your comfort, the kind that wraps around us like peace in a storm. Let your healing presence sit with us like a warm light in a cold room. Restore what pain tried to steal. Jesus, we believe you're rebuilding what we thought was lost forever. Teach us to trust again. Replace our shame with your truth, our fear with your love. Help us rest, really rest, in the safety of your arms, and let joy rise again, softly, slowly, but fully. Amen. Now that you've walked this path of healing, step by step, wound by wound, let me ask you something. What if today is the day things begin to shift? What if this prayer wasn't just for comfort, but for breakthrough? You've already done something powerful. You didn't run from your pain, you brought it into the light. So what's the next step God is asking you to take? Will you give yourself permission to rest, to rebuild trust, to feel joy again? If something in this video spoke to your soul, let it move you into action. Comment below, what part of this prayer did your heart need most? Let your words be part of someone else's healing too. And don't stop here. There's more waiting for you. Watch the next video that's on your screen right now. It's a continuation of what God started here. Don't miss it. And before you go, check the pinned comment. You'll find a link to the gratitude journal, a beautiful companion to help you walk this healing day by day. It's not just a journal, it's a tool to help you see God's hand even in the hard places. Subscribe if you haven't yet, and turn on notifications. Because tomorrow, we'll meet here again, and together, we'll keep healing, one prayer, one promise, one day at a time.